we still want to be morally good people. We still want to have a moral compass. We still want to raise good human children. We still want to live a good life. We still want to experience life. Like, we still want to be the best version of ourselves, but we have no idea where to start. We don't know, like, if you take the God equation out of your situation, or the religion, or everything else, like, where do you start? Where do you start figuring out life? Where do you start figuring out your moral systems?
There's a lot of talk about morals, being a good person, living a good life, about having a moral framework for your life, the use of value language and value judgments. They have a desire to live moral lives, and that's commendable. It's a good thing to live a good life as opposed to living an evil life. But there's questions that begin to come into my mind, especially when you talk about removing God from the equation. The question does arise, what do you mean by good? What do you mean by a moral framework? When we speak of good versus evil, we're talking about ways in which we should or should not live. So we should do good and we should not do evil. So we have a moral obligation to do good, or in other words, a duty to do good, to do right. But here's the thing, laws always come from lawgivers. Laws do not make sense outside of a lawgiver. If there are ways in which we should live and there's ways in which we should not live, it only makes sense if there is someone to be accountable to. So a moral framework, or an objective moral framework, only makes sense if God actually exists. If God does not exist, then objective moral values and duties do not exist. If God does not exist, you are nothing more than a cosmic accident. You are complex space dust, a moist robot, if you will. There is nothing right or wrong. There is no good or evil. There is no meaning. There is no value, and there is no purpose to your life. On atheism, you cannot ground any belief in objective moral values and duties. You can create some moral structure for your life, but at the end of the day, it's all fantasy and delusion. The Christian, however, can ground a belief in objective moral values and duties because they are rooted in the perfect nature of God. There is a standard we can point to beyond simply the mind of the human being, where we can actually say that something is objectively good or evil based on that standard. On atheism, there is no standard beyond the human mind, so it's simply up to the individual. Nothing is actually right or wrong. Nothing is good or evil. It's simply up to you. You can effectively do whatever you want, and you can never tell somebody that whatever they're doing, their thoughts, their actions are wrong or right. Again, you can create some sort of moral structure for your life, but at the end of the day, it is ultimately fantasy and delusion. So removing God from the equation actually negates the ability to justify or ground a belief in actual right and wrong, good or evil. If you want to apply objective moral values to your life, you actually have to steal from a theistic worldview in order to do so. Now, this doesn't mean that an atheist cannot be moral. What it does mean, though, is that you cannot ground a belief in any actual moral values if you remove God from the equation.